Okay. Oh, this is that class. Hey, Mac. Missed you on Saturday. We got some people that need training. They thought they knew what they were doing, but I should have checked. Because they didn't.
Well, because then when I asked that girl if she knew how to do scorebook, and she said yes.
Oh, yeah. I know how to do it.
She definitely doesn't.
Missing some critical information. Like how they got on base. And whether they scored a run, RBI or not. Or whether there was an error or not. Yeah. I mean, there were some things they did right, like base on balls and K and but there were some lacking. I was just trying to compile a few stats. And all right, hey, this is for Michaela and Lauren that were absent today. Hope you guys are feeling better, and we're going to do the lecture today. Okay. All right. So last thing we checked on, guys, if we go back in the notes, okay, we've got Manchuria, right? We got Ethiopia being invaded. Okay. The response by the world is crickets. Then you have Hitler rearming the Rhineland in 1936. All right. The United States is trying to shore up with a good neighbor policy our hemisphere. Okay. Meanwhile, in December of 1937, there's going to be an incident. This is going to be called the Panay incident. And you may ask yourself, this Yangtzee River, which is the third largest river in the world, okay, why there would be an American gunboat in China in 1937, okay? And this is the Panay right here. Here's the gun on the front of the boat, okay? And here's the U.S. flag flying in the stern. Okay. That's right. Is that right? Any boat people in here? No. Oh, we live in Kansas. Okay. I thought that was funnier than you did. Okay, so now, why would this gunboat be in China? Well, here's why. American companies, oil companies, other types of companies have invested heavily in China. And so there are American civilians there working in China and American ships going up and down the Yangtze River. The Panay is there to protect them, to protect Americans and American business interests. Okay? And on that fateful day in December of 1937, this river, which at some parts is more than a mile wide, okay, is attacked by air and from the coastline by the Japanese. It's going to kill 2 Americans. But you can see this isn't just some small attack. 46 Americans on this boat are wounded. Okay, so this is a pretty heavy attack. Now, the Japanese say, whoa, wait, we're sorry. We didn't know it was an American boat. We thought it was Chinese. We apologize, and we'd like to offer $2 million to the families of the sailors that were killed. Okay, now, let me transpose this to 2018. An American naval vessel patrolling the Persian Gulf, okay, is attacked by the air and from the coastline by Iranian forces. What will the American response be if that were the case today? We would react militarily, okay? Most likely. All right? Now, the reaction by Americans here is interesting and notable. People were saying back home, why is there an American gunboat in China? Why are there American civilians there? Get those people out of there. Japan is attacking China. If we have Americans there, we're going to get caught up in it, and we're going to be brought into a war that we don't want to get into. Get our people out of there. Okay, so that was the response rather than, hey, let's hit, we need to react to this militarily. Okay? Yeah.
Wait, so why would China attack their own ship if they wanted to win on that?
No, the Japanese attacked our ship in China.
They thought it was Chinese.
Yes. You following us? Okay, so this kind of goes to that our reaction isn't, I don't know if it's necessarily appeasement, but our lack of response might be seen as appeasement. Okay? You following me on that? Okay? Now, I kind of have this fun thing. I like to talk about this. this is the Yangtzee River, all right? And how many of you guys have heard about this? The Chinese have just completed construction on the world's largest dam on this river. How many of you guys have heard it? It's called the Three Gorges Dam. Okay, I kind of find this interesting. My daughter Lily is actually from not too far from here, but the Three Gorges Dam is right here on the Yangtzee. And it is going to dam up this region right here, which is in a valley. It's in the mountains. Okay? The reservoir that is going to fill up, it's still filling as we speak. It's been completed for a couple of years now. It's still filling. It's going to be the size of Indiana. This is a massive dam and a resulting massive reservoir. Okay? This is the type of thing that could, affect the earth. Okay? Like this rotation of the earth type of stuff. Okay? Now, the Yangtzee is known for its killer floods. All right? I mean, it's displaced millions of people because of its floods, like the Mississippi has done in the past. Okay? So this dam is kind of necessary to control the flooding. All right? This thing is almost a mile wide. Okay? And it sits about 500 feet above the sea level. This is a massive dam. This is the largest civil engineering project in history. And you guys are just learning about it now. Okay? Now, it has 23 turbines for hydroelectric power. Each one of these massive turbines produces energy equal to a medium-sized nuclear power plant. So lots of hydroelectricity for China, which is probably a good thing for China. It's not coal, okay, for you greenies, all right? But the ecology of all this, do you think there were people that lived in this area the size of Indiana? Yeah. They had to displace like 1.2 million people. They had to move them. They didn't have a choice. Okay. Do you think there's any animals in this area the size of Indiana in the kind of jungle mountains of China in this region? Yeah. And you think there's some endangered species like the spotted and clouded leopard and the golden eagle?
Oh my gosh, I had a spotted leopard.
Now the eagle can fly. Okay. But they have found, in the years prior to this, in the gorge area, they had found numerous new species of animals, new reptiles, new amphibians, okay, new mammals that had never been discovered before in this area. It's all going to be submerged. You know what else is going to be submerged? Hundreds of historic sites dating back 10,000 BC will be submerged. Factories, villages, cities are going to be submerged. Okay?
We're just going to leave it?
Well, yeah.
You're not going to drain it down first or anything?
Yeah. Okay? This is massive. I have this little thing I printed out, but I can't find it. I apologize. So most of this just from memory. The amount of steel and concrete that had to go in this thing is massive. Okay? Now, this does pose some threats. I mean, if this dam breaks, people downstream are in trouble. Now, if we ever went to war with China, no, we couldn't do that. Okay. But, you're laughing. But if there was an earthquake, okay, I mean, imagine the weight of all this water in this new reservoir and the impact this could have on the ecology and the sediments that build up on the dam from the river. There's a lot of sediments that are going to build up against this dam. Okay, it's really kind of interesting. Here I have a picture, and I do have video about this as well. Okay. My daughter is she was born kind of up in here. This is Hunan province. up in here, so not too far from the dam, pretty close to the river. But what this does, guys, this is Chongqing here, okay? The dam is going to allow for larger ships to go further into China, into the inner part of China, which is going to open up markets to about 380 million people that previously they couldn't get ships into. Okay, so this is really going to help their economy and maybe ours as well. I mean, markets for 380 million people, that's the size of our population, or bigger than the United States. So if we can sell, a third of those people Marlboro cigarettes, then we're going to be doing pretty good. Or cheeseburgers and Kentucky Fried Chicken. They like Kentucky Fried Chicken in China.
Where are they going to get that steel?
I've been there. Yeah. Okay. So this kind of blow up here of this area here. Okay, and here's a good picture of the dam. Now the video, this video clip is put together by kind of an international student that's kind of doing a photo journalism type thing. It's pretty good. He seems like a nice guy. He does speak Mandarin, which is pretty interesting for a white guy. You don't expect it, and then all of a sudden he's speaking Mandarin. You're like, whoa, this dude knows Mandarin. Where'd you go? I had you. There you are.
The Three Gorges Dam is the world's largest hydroelectricity project, the world's largest hydropower station, and a massive water control project that has made a huge difference to navigation in the region.
It's like John Williams right there.
Where I'm sitting right now is as high as the highest point of the Three Gorges Dam, 185 meters. The water in this basin behind me reaches a height of 175 meters. And even though we can't see a lot of it today, I'll describe to you guys how vast and how wide this dam actually is. From this point to the other point of the upstream is 2,309 meters wide. This water and the water downstream has a difference of 100 meters. Can you imagine an amount of water that high, even as high as the Statue of Liberty in New York, what kind of ability it has to control floodings and generate power? It's no wonder that this enormous construction behind me earns its title of biggest standalone architectural construction in the world.
Like a giant door, the Three Gorges Dam locks the exit of the Three Gorges of the Yangtzee River. The rapidly running water is retained in an enormous reservoir, 600 kilometers in length and 175 meters above the river. Tourists from every country of the world come to see the grand Three Gorges Dam.
Is this your first time to visit the Three Gorges? Okay, what are your feelings? What is your sympathy towards this place?
Well, I know where you're going.
No, I'm totally no intentions, no agenda.
I think it's a tremendous project, and I think they needed to do it. Because they have you had all the flooding issues, and you have a tremendous need for power in China. I mean, it's a huge country, and I think we shouldn't judge what anybody else does in their own country.
Are you an engineer? Are you, from a professional point of view, interested in this place? At all? Are you an engineer? Or you were before? What's next for you professionally? Are you still doing things with engineering? Retired. Okay.
3 sections of the Three Gorges Dam are open to tourists, but you need to walk on top of the dam to see how huge it really is.
我现在获得了特批，我一会儿可以去一个普通的游客没法去的地方。那个地方是哪儿呢？是大坝的坝里。
Gorges Dam is obviously not only used to generate electricity, it's also used to control the river and to control it from flooding. Now here are 23 floodgates, which are all massive in size. And you must be wondering how big the water basin on the upper end of the dam might be. It houses an amount of 20 million cubic meters, which is obviously an incredible amount. It's hard to imagine.
Pretty exciting stuff. Okay. Well,
Yeah, it's exciting. I don't know. It makes me upset because
it makes you upset?
kind of. I don't know. I feel like it's a lot more like natural beauty than it is. Like all that stuff. Just a personal.
Would you rather than burn coal?
No. But I don't know. It's kind of like, I don't know. It's not.
Now, was it foggy or was it smoggy? I don't know. They do have a problem with smog there, especially in the capital, Beijing. Okay. Yeah, pollution is an issue in China. All right. All right, moving forward. The United States does not want to get involved in these problems that are starting to happen overseas, okay? You guys know that. We're in this period of isolationism. But in order to remain there, Congress is going to start passing what are called neutrality acts to make sure by law we are not getting involved in here, guys, taking sides. Because if you don't want to get involved, then the best thing to do is not choose sides and remain neutral. Does that make sense? So we're going to pass laws that are going to restrict us from taking sides. Now, what Roosevelt does here, he obviously recognizes that if nobody stands up to this, the League of Nations, the United States, Britain, France, nobody stands up to this, then the world will be engulfed in war. And he is predicting the future. This is going to happen. Okay? And it's really not that hard to see it. Now, he calls for a quarantine of aggressor nations. Now, you guys know what quarantine means, right? It means cutting off access to and so forth. Are we going to do that? Are we actually going to quarantine these nations, Japan, Italy, and so forth? No, not at this point. So these are just merely words, guys. Okay, Roosevelt's not stupid. He's a politician. He wants to get reelected. So why would he go against what the American people want? Well, let's find out exactly what the American people want. Who the American people are when it comes to this subject matter. Okay? The Americans had not forgotten the slaughter of World War I. And we didn't even get it as bad as the Europeans and the Russians. Okay? But we haven't forgotten the Great War. So here's how we can kind of classify Americans. Okay? Some became pacifists, saying no war for any reason whatsoever. Okay? Most Americans just believed in the ideas that we've talked about, in isolationism. All right? You had immigration. Remember, around the turn of the century, you had a lot of Italians, a lot of Germans coming into this country. Many didn't like the idea of possibly going to war with what was recently their homeland. Okay? And lastly, you had some that just liked what the Nazis were about and wanted to become American Nazis. Or as Jonah Goldberg, enlightened Nazis, as he said. Okay? Now, I want to talk about a couple groups here. Down here, this is a political cartoon from roughly 1939. Okay? We're not quite to 39 yet. But this is like a Paul Revere scene. All right? And on the horse it says America First. Have you heard that recently? Okay. Now, on riding the horse is Senators Wheeler and Nye, and the guy in the middle is Charles Lindbergh of the Spirit of St. Louis fame, okay, who's very famous now. Okay. And what they're saying from this horse is Roosevelt is a warmonger. Now, Roosevelt is warning people, but he's not taking us to war. Now, did anybody see Their Darkest Hour that just came out about Winston Churchill? The guy that Gary Oldman that played him just won the Oscar last night for Best Actor. Okay, so he plays Churchill in this movie. My wife and I and daughter watched it this weekend. It's on Cox, Prime, whatever you get, their pay-per-view. Okay, paid $5.99 or something. Okay, to watch this movie instead of, if we all three went to the theaters, and got popcorn, $30, $40. Okay, so we watched that, and it was really interesting because they bring up some history. Churchill is asking Roosevelt for help. Roosevelt's hands are tied. If you watch this movie, it's really good. You saw Dunkirk, right? So this is like right before Dunkirk, all right, or while Dunkirk is happening, okay? And Roosevelt is asking, Churchill is asking Roosevelt for help, and his hands are tied. He's like, we can bring these planes within about, say, a mile of Canada, and then if you could get some horses or something and pull them across the border, then you can have the planes, but we can't really give them to you. Okay, these neutrality acts in some ways are ludicrous, but we'll get into that. Okay, so Roosevelt is a warmonger. Nothing can crush Hitler but a negotiated peace. And I found this very interesting as well in this movie, The Darkest Hour. The French had fallen. The French were done. The British were trapped in France. And Churchill becomes the prime minister after Chamberlain, which I'll talk about, leaves. Okay, and it was astonishing, I didn't know this history, that the Conservative Party that Churchill was a member of, they were all like, hey, we need to cut a deal with Hitler. We can't win. We can't defeat Hitler. And Churchill's like, no, we're going to fight. In addition to that, we're not going to surrender. Even if we're defeated, we're going to keep fighting. And that's going to be my message to the people. Okay, it's really, this is a pretty good movie, guys. As far as this history we're about to talk about. So, over the next week, if you got a couple hours, ask mom and dad, this is for school, can I spend $5.99 or $4.99 for the non-HD version? Okay. All right. Or you can go up to the community video store, whatever that's called, Home Family Video, and pay $2.99 or something like that. Okay. But I really recommend it, and Gary Oldman gets the Oscar. Okay, good for him. All right. Anyhow, I like this one. Hitler don't want to fight us. We haven't nothing to fight with. This is a defeatist attitude. Okay, this is Britain's war. Okay, so this is 3940. Okay, and then over here you got the American Nazis together here. And this picture is taken from Madison Square Garden in New York City. You've got this guy in a Nazi uniform with the American flag, George Washington, and the swastika right next to him. They held a large rally in Madison Square Garden in New York City, the Nazi Party of America. Okay, there was a lot of support for the Nazis here. Not just here, but in other places in Europe as well. And this is where I want to turn to something called the fifth column. Okay? Any of you guys heard of this before, the fifth column? All right, this goes back to Roman history. All right, remember when you studied the Roman Empire?
Yes.
And the Roman Empire kept expanding, correct? So what the Romans did, they were smart. Okay, what they did is they sent people into those places they wanted to conquer. And they rallied support for the Romans, saying, hey, you know, the Romans are doing this and they're doing that. And the Romans are great. And wouldn't it be good if the Romans could come in and help us? Okay? That's one thing they do. Drum up support. The other thing they do is cause instability. Okay? So, like, if you're trying to take over a government or a country, is it easier to take over if it's unstable? Of course it is. Okay, so they would cause problems. They would say, hey, you know, the Romans have this, we don't. This is wrong. Our government stinks. We need to get rid of them. And then maybe some marches, maybe some riots and stuff like that to cause instability. Okay? Making them ripe to be taken over. Guys, every single country in Europe that Hitler's going to take over has a fifth column. Now, of course, I've got to talk about a movie here. Yes, please.
Is fifth column just like a term for doing that?
It's a term for invading a country with civilian-like folks to undermine the enemy so that you can take them over. The Romans. Okay? Now, how many guys have not seen the movie? So you're raising your hand if you have not seen the movie. The Sound of Music.
Are you kidding me?
With the sound of music. What is wrong with you?
I think my grandma showed me that movie.
Volkman. The Sound of Music. Julia Andrews.
You play the best music.
The same woman that plays Mary Poppins. Spoonful of sugar. Edelweiss.
Tisk, tisk, tisk.
Edelweiss. Right? You know this? No? You don't know? Okay. I'm going to shame your parents next time I see them.
Please go for it.
Have you seen it? Sorry. All right. The Von Traub family. Yes, everybody that's seen it knows them. They're in Austria. Okay? And the father is an admiral in the Navy, the Austrian Navy. Okay? They neighbor, of course, Germany. And then the oldest girl, there's girls and boys, they all sing and dance, and it's wonderful. And the scenery is gorgeous, right? We're in the Alps. It's so good. It's my wife's favorite movie of all time.
Been to the lake that they filmed.
Oh, that's sweet. Huh? It's her favorite movie. But anyhow, the oldest girl, Liesel, I believe, is dating this nice young boy. But the nice young boy is infatuated with who? The Nazis, okay? And so he wants to be a little Nazi too, okay? And the father's like, this little guy wants to be a Nazi. Does he understand the Nazis? Guys, when Hitler amassed his troops at the border with Austria, there had been so much propaganda in Austria and the fifth column that Hitler did not have to fire a shot. They were like, please come home, Hitler. Please come save us from ourselves, I guess. I don't know. It's crazy, okay? But the fifth column is going to play a big role here at helping the Germans take over, all right? And they had stooges in every country that became leaders of the Nazi party in those countries, okay? And it's awful, all right? So there you go. The fifth column. Next slide. Wait a second. Are we almost out of time? Wait a second. What's going on here? How come I'm done. This is how far I got first out, or third out.
We have a shorter schedule.
We had a shorter, but you guys were behind. What did I leave out?
Watching music from
Overtime. Third hour was cut off by.
It was short. I know. We just said that. Mara, are you getting enough sleep? Okay. Well, go ahead and write down this thing here. And that'll speed us up after the video. Okay. Take care.